Really simple.
Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Miss Sarah Smith. She is running in Washington, Congressional District 9. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Requested a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm really excited to be here then. Awesome. Yay. That makes me feel good.
I was inviting all my friends who have liked your page because that's how I do the invites primarily. And there were like over 80 of my friends, and like they're from all across the country. So that's pretty awesome.
That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, the internet's an amazing thing.
No, it really is. It's been a huge, especially for grassroots campaigns. Like, I'm sure I'm going to get into this later, but the internet has changed the game for a lot of us. So I, for one, am extremely grateful for it.
Yes. We learned in 2016, we are the media. That's for damn sure. Sarah is actually impressive because she's a Justice Dem. She's endorsed by Brand New Congress, Our Revolution Washington, DSA, and Olympia. So she's like, all of our favorite groups, she's endorsed by at least the Washington ones. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So there has definitely been some wins for the Justice Dems. Obviously, Alexandria, the biggest one. People are actually comparing you to her.
I've gotten it a lot. Yes.
That's awesome. And I see she did endorse you as well.
Yes, she did.
Which is freaking amazing. And she is on speaking engagements with Bernie right now as well, which is so cool. So they're saying that you have the chance to pull an upset like she did. So can you just describe who you're running against and the differences? Which
sure,
a while.
I'm happy to. I've done this once or twice. So I'm running against Adam Smith, and Alex and I have a lot of parallels in our races. So she was running against an entrenched establishment incumbent who has been there for years. I'm doing the same thing. I'm running against a self-described moderate who only in August of 2017, after he got a progressive challenger, decided he was a pragmatic progressive, whatever that means. And he's been in office for about 22 years. Funny thing, his name is Adam Smith, no relation. And I feel really horrible because his wife's name is also Sarah. So I feel really bad about that.
That's amazing.
We've had the chance to engage, and I made the joke at him, and he's like, yeah, thanks for that. And he's been a good sport about it. But I'm running against basically an entrenched war Democrat. He's a war hawk. He is bought and paid for by the military complex. It shows in all of his votes. It shows in his lack of initiative to take down the AUMF. It shows in him constantly voting to increase the military budget. And he likes to harp on the one time he voted against it, but one time doesn't make up for the other 21 times in my mind. And then he's one of the ranked members of the House Armed Forces Committee, and he's actually one of the top 3 fundraisers for the Democratic Party. He also is one of the top 3 Democrats who take the most from PACs, and he's actually the representative in Washington who takes the most PAC money. And he says it doesn't affect his vote, and that's a really noble belief he might have for himself, but the fact is that it does, and it shows in his record. It shows in his support for the Patriot Act. It shows in his support for the Iraq War. It shows in his lack of initiative to take out the AUMF. It shows in how hard we've had to push him to get away from war and start focusing on what people need and what the people of his district need, which is a better quality of life. And as Alex put it, a dignified quality of life.
Wow. Now, is that not the guy that Pramila just endorsed?
So we're not sure, because if she did, she's keeping it awfully quiet. It's not listed on her pages anywhere. She hasn't made any kind of public announcement. So I know she's been he suddenly jumped on her coattails about an immigration reform bill, and he's played this really fun flip-flopping game where he a week ago said he doesn't think we should abolish ICE. He's all over the news saying we shouldn't abolish ICE. We shouldn't get rid of it. And at an endorsement panel we were both in, he said, oh, if you just want to call it the INS, you can just do that. Just call it the INS. It's fine. I don't care, but we shouldn't abolish ICE. And then after that endorsement meeting, a week later, he's suddenly saying, I'm on a bill to abolish ICE and we need to abolish ICE. And I have had it up to my ears with this guy. He can't decide what he stands for. He doesn't bring any vision to the table. If he's just going to copy my platform, just give me the seat because I've got a hell of a lot more vision than just abolishing ICE. He jumped on Pramilla's coattails about this bill. And one of the things that drives me the most nuts is he's trying to ride her reputation as much as he can as a progressive when she's the junior House representative to him. She's been in office for 1 term. He's been in office for 11 terms. Where were these bills when he was in office 10 years ago? Where have these bills been throughout his entire tenure? Nothing has stopped him except for money and his donors. That's why at the end of the day, he can talk about how he thinks Donald Trump is the #1 threat to America, but he's not ever going to try to fight to repeal the authorized use of military force because his donors won't let him because they're making a lot of money and they stand to make a hell of a lot of money under Donald Trump. Sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. I get a little heated.
But word every 5 seconds.
in my non-political life, I swear a lot, and sometimes it comes out.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. Wow. So yeah, right on. If he is going to steal your platform, we may as well just get you elected. That's a really good point. This is what I always point out to my viewers. If you say you're progressive and you take corporate money, I don't care if you stand for every single progressive thing on your platform. If you take corporate money, not progressive. F you, exactly. Not getting our vote.
Because like the thing is, you see a lot of these incumbents, especially Adam is so guilty of this. It's upsetting. It's super irksome to me, but it's really easy right now with a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled presidency to say, I'm a progressive. That's why all of a sudden, all these long-term, multi-decade incumbents are coming out and saying, I'm a progressive, because they don't actually have that real fear of those bills hitting the floor and having to vote for it. So the thing people and voters have to be really educated on is know your incumbent's voting record. Because at the end of the day, Adam voted to put ICE in. He voted to create them. He's voted to extend the Patriot Act. He voted to put us in the Iraq War. He voted to sell cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia. I have no faith in a representative like that to turn around and suddenly do a total 180 on an issue like ICE. And the fact is, he's a product of a bygone era of politics. He's a product of reactionary politics instead of proactive politics. And what people want now is they want representation with a plan. They want representation that sees the big picture, that sees down the line and knows, you know what, in 50 years, we can have green energy and we should start now. And that's why we need to push for this now, because in 50 years, it's still going to be important. It's still going to change the world. We need representatives that see that don't just look at these bills and look at what people are saying, look at what's trending on Twitter and say whatever that is in order to keep their seat. The whole point of public service, the whole point of serving in Congress is to bring a vision to the board and fight for something, to have a goal, to want to achieve something while you're in office. And if your version of achieving something is just holding on to your seat for 3 decades, get out of your seat, because we need someone that's actually going to do something and use it.
I get why people are feeling you. I get it.
I get into the zone.
Well, the interesting thing is he kind of sounds like a male Hillary. Like he kind of sounds a lot like her, which automatically means he's not good in my book. I've definitely been getting a lot of requests for you. And when I was reading your bio about how you grew up and everything, it's very obvious that you are part of the 99%, which is the epitome of who we need to get in there. So because of that, do you feel like that makes you better to understand our grievances with healthcare and college debt and things like that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things that I've been saying is If you haven't lived as a working class person in post-recession America, you have no idea what it's like to be a working class American in post-recession America. You can have all these people coming to you telling you, we need healthcare, we need student debt relief, we need a student debt bailout, we need debt-free education, we need infrastructure investment, we need to invest in green energy. And you can hear them say, okay, I hear you. I'm going to go to the other guy and talk to him and see what he thinks. But if you've lived it, if you understand it, if you've suffered under student debt, if you've struggled to buy a house, if you can't start a family, these aren't things you go talk to the other guy about. There is no other guy. There is only the 99%. There is only the 99% of us that are suffering under what exists right now. And so we need to push back against that 1%, not ask them for their opinion on it. And we can't wait for people that don't understand what life is like, that don't understand the kind of things we live with. My husband and I just got rid of a room. I say got rid of, but he just chose to move out. Our roommate just moved out because we couldn't afford our mortgage. We had roommates, and we've been married for 5 years. And we've had roommates for, I think, 3.5 of them because we couldn't afford our house. And I'm still working full time on top of campaigning because, I mean, I said it today, but they've made sure that politics is not something working class people can afford. And until you've lived that and until you understand that and you really truly grasp the gravity of it, you can't speak to the issues that the 99% are struggling with right now. And I think that, Adam, the incumbent, I think his perspective was great 20 years ago and it was relevant 20 years ago. But after the recession, everything changed. And after 2016, everything changed again. And we need something different. We need somebody that understands what it's like to feel the helplessness that we do. We need somebody who understands what it's like to feel stuck, what it's like to feel like you have to struggle constantly just to make ends meet or keep a roof over your head. And you can talk about having that experience, but until you've lived it, you can't bring it to Congress and fight for it because it's personal then. And I mean, Ayanna Pressley says things like my favorite quote is those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. And she's completely correct because the people that are suffering the most are the people that we need to be having in Congress, whose voices need to be at that congressional table, who need to be heard over the cacophony of voices that we have that are corporate owned. We need to have our space at that table so someone will fight for us. And in order to have that, we have to have representation that's lived that experience and that can bring that experience into legislative power and that sees how these bills and this legislation is going to affect people and looks at the big picture and looks down the line and is willing to protect us, not just right now for a few months, but willing to protect us for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. I was just writing that down. That's an amazing quote. That is awesome. It makes so much sense. So as someone who actually, I've interviewed 90 candidates. I do have the ones who say, my volunteers, do you go door to door? Do you phone bank? You do it. And that's what's up. And every candidate should. Yeah. You're the ones who need to know. It's amazing on the flip side, it's amazing the amount of volunteers you have and the amount of support you have. I was telling someone the other day, since Bernie, Alex and yourself are the only two campaigns I've seen that have brought that fury back and with the volunteers and really come on, we got to make this happen. And it's so invigorating. It's so exciting to watch. When you do go door to door and speak to people, what are some of the concerns that they're sharing with you?
So my district is really cool. To try and explain it a little better, we have a majority minority district. So there's a majority of people of color in this district. And we also have some of the most wealthy, affluent areas of the whole state. And we also have some of the poorest areas in the whole state. So one of the things we did early on is we actually jumped our canvassing events around. So we were in Federal Way, we were in North Port of Tacoma, we were in South Seattle, we were in Bellevue, we were on Mercer Island. And we got to kind of hear people talk about their concerns. And there's kind of it depends on where you go, what the big concerns are. So in the working class areas, in the lower income areas, we hear things like healthcare. Healthcare is really, really important. Debt-free education, being able to get their kids educated and educated well. And things like infrastructure investment, investing in public transit is really important to people, because the less we invest in public transportation and infrastructure, the less likely it is for people to get to work. And having these low cost public options gives people that ability. So you hear in working class areas, those are probably the top three things. But if you go to the more affluent areas, they talk more about, healthcare is important, debt-free education is important, and climate change are the really big ones that we hear. But the coolest thing is no matter what, from tip to tail of the whole district, whether you make $15,000 a year or $250,000 a year, the common thread that we've had every single door agree with us on is we need to get corporate money out of politics. So overarching in the district, that's probably the number one biggest concern of everybody in the district, because people see it now. And they might have been politically apathetic before, but in my opinion, that political apathy was constructed. I've said a couple of things along the campaign trail, and one of them is we've had this belief that our vote doesn't matter, our vote isn't a big deal, it's not very, very important. But the establishment only started to tell us our vote didn't matter when women and people of color got the right to do it. And it's important to remember the context of that. Our vote is power. And we have the ability to get rid of corporate money in politics if we stop electing corporate-owned politicians. And that's why that part of my message is hugely important to me, because all these things we want, healthcare, debt-free education, infrastructure, green energy, all this stuff, ending wars, none of it is going to be possible until we pry off the fingers of corporations from our government. We have to get them away from our table and reclaim our seat. And if they don't want to give us one, we will pull up a folding chair.
Absolutely.
Anthony Clark said that. I can't take credit for that one. It was so good. I love it.
It's right on. That is so damn true.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that people are, I'll admit it. I voted Dem for, over 20 years. I'll be 40 and 2015 was when I woke up like, holy shit, look at all this money in politics. I'm like, so many people, it took Bernard to like snap me out of it.
Yeah.
So the fact that so many people are realizing that and acknowledging that is something that has to change. Something I'm seeing, though, is a lot of candidates saying, I will now stop taking corporate money. And it's because they've already raised enough. You know what I mean? Like they've already been campaigning a year.
Yeah. I mean,
now,
it's another thing that's easy, right? Once you already have it, it's really easy to say it. It's just like how it's really safe to be a progressive all of a sudden in Congress. It's really safe all of a sudden to take no corporate money when you've raised $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm telling my viewers all the time, please do your research, please, please, please. But and I digress a little, but you said something important that I wanted to touch on. Something I talk about a lot is, there's so many candidates like yourself who do work full time or raise a family or what have you, in addition to campaigning, and campaigning is a full-time job. And when I see these candidates who are so amazing and they do so much, and they have so much promise, and they have so much love and passion and great intentions and all the right platform, and then people don't show up and vote, it's like they're like my babies, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no.
I know. I mean, running with a slate like brand new Congress and Justice Democrats, I don't think behind the scenes, we get really invested in each other's primaries. I mean, I've been in text chats, like video chatting with everyone. We're like, let's hit refresh. And I mean, when Alex won, I was texting Rob Ryerson, who ran down in Arkansas. I was texting Paula Jean in West Virginia. And I was like, oh my gosh, our girl. And we're all in the chat. Lindsey Fagan and I are like, this is incredible. So I completely understand. And when I watch the numbers and I don't see people showing up in force to vote for these candidates that I know are incredible, that I've met, who I know are not full of it, are real and are about the movement and are so dedicated and passionate. And my heart just shatters because people are not showing up to vote. And that's the biggest thing. And I mean, in Washington, we're fortunate enough that we have mail-in ballots, which is awesome. But then getting people to return them, I myself am very guilty of putting stamps on things and not putting it in the mailbox. So I understand, I get it. But voting is not like sending a letter to my mom. Voting is how we change the world. And to have that kind of power in your hand, to know that checking those boxes, that's your power to change everything. That's huge. And that envelope becomes more than just an envelope. That envelope becomes precious. It becomes yours. It's your voice in our political system. And so it's really important to try and get that into people and drill it into them and go door to door and be like, did you send your ballot off? Did you send your ballot off? And we have a huge phone banking push that we're going to be planning. And we have a GOTV effort because we just want to get people to remember that this is their moment to seize back their power.
Absolutely. And, the interesting thing about doing the show is I've had candidates from across the country, and I swear it's like every state has different voting regulations and everything. And if you guys don't know, Washington State is actually mail-in only. They do not have any polling places. So that's just fascinating to me. And at first I was thinking, oh, cool. So there's no kind of fuckery with shit like that. And then I'm like, wait, how do you know that the ballots get there? Or do you, you know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think I'm paranoid after everything we went through. I was talking to Tyler about that too. Is there, do you have to put it in the mail, or do they have lock boxes, or?
They have lock boxes. So I actually work full time right down the road from the elections office. So I know where all the lock boxes are and everything now. And we're trying to create a good map so people know. And we're trying to make sure in our email blast, we're going to have a map ready. So when the 20th comes and the ballots come in your mailbox, we can start pushing out the map and reminding people, you go physically drop it off. If you're concerned about mailing it, go drop it off. For me, it's really easy. I'm very, very privileged that I can just drive to work and then drop it in on my way to work, which is really nice. But so other people have to go out of their way.
For you to take other people's as well and mail those?
You cannot. That is one caveat. They have to mail their own. Because I had to talk to our canvassers about this. So our Get Out the Vote push is really, really different than Alex's. So hers was one day where she has to get people out there. She has to mobilize people. She has to make sure that they're going to the polls. Ours are being really annoying mail persons, walking around, knocking on people's doors, asking them if they remember to mail in their ballot. But we can't physically take their ballot and do it for them. That is a violation of elections law. So we had to advise everyone, please don't take their ballots or ballot gather. That is not okay. But you can encourage people strongly, and you can be out there in the field and you can be knocking on their doors and remind them, or tell them, your mailbox is right there. You just go drop it in. And it's an interesting kind of push. So we have to be a little creative.
Stamps door to door.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about, is showing up with stamps and saying, don't worry, we brought your stamps. We'll help you get this step of the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have no reason not to.
Exactly. Until you weigh your excuse. But one of the other reasons we've talked about it is because, especially in lower income areas with disabled persons, people who are the elderly, who might, it's a short walk to us, but it's a really big journey to them. If we can do something like pull the financial burden off them to mail their ballots back and give them those stamps and get them back out there, that will have done something huge. Even if they don't vote for me, that's okay. I just want them to vote. I'm just really excited for people to participate in the process. Obviously there's a part of me that's like, vote for me. But at the same time, we have to have a big picture view of this. And my big picture view is, if we're getting people engaged, if people are reading about candidates and their issues and these problems and doing their research, that's a leap and a bound from where we were in 2016. That's huge. And so if that's what we manage to accomplish, is getting people to care a little bit more, then that's a huge victory in our camp. And I think it's nothing to sniff at all.
No, and that's what is so interesting about Trump. He inadvertently got millions of people off their asses. So, if Hillary won, people would be at brunch, as the sign says. Yes. And I ask many candidates, would you be running if Trump didn't win? And most of them say no. So, as much pain and turmoil as he's causing us, there are, those few good things to come out of it, that we're more aware and we're more active. You, speaking of corporate money, on the topic of money, you do support a Fight for 15 in Washington, in your area, anyway, in your district. Is that a good Like, is that a good amount, or should it be higher? Or
Oh boy, it should be so much higher for just to be able to afford a 2 bedroom. And then, God forbid you have to worry about paying for childcare. You need to be making, I think it was about Huffington posted a study, and it's about $22.08 an hour in order to survive in Washington. So the fight for 15, I think it's a great place to start. In a lot of areas in America, the fight for 15 is going to really change lives. But we also have to make sure that we're not just changing lives in some places and not others. We have to make sure that we're giving everybody a dignified quality of life, not just some people. And the fight for 15 is a great start. But all it's doing is it's setting us up to have the same fight again in the next couple of years. What we need to do is we need a living wage that's tied to inflation. And if the living wage starts at 15 an hour, but is tied to inflation, oh boy, that's going to go up real fast. But it's also going to eliminate the need for this fight to ever happen again. And this is another area that I think we have a lot of opportunity to show people that we are not reactive, we are proactive. And that politicians like me, like Alex, like Lindsey Fagan, like Adrienne Bell, like Dorothy Gasquet, we're not just looking at what's going to change things for people in the short term right now. We're looking, okay, this is going to change it for them in the short term. How can we solidify this in such a way that it's going to set them up for long-term success? And taking the fight for 15 and tying it to minimum wage and making sure that inflation is tied in there and it's wrapped up tight and it can't be eroded at, that's going to make sure that we're not just chasing our tails, having the same fight every 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in Pennsylvania, and ours is I want to say $7.25, $7.50 for minimum wage. Like, who can live on that, even if you're single?
Nobody. And if you have kids, I just shared a study yesterday. It's so average apartment rents here are about $2,507 a month for a 2-bedroom. And then childcare is $1,709 a month for one child. In order to just, not including utilities, food, incidentals, insurance, car insurance, internet, cell phones, just to have a 2-bedroom apartment and be able to pay for childcare, you have to make $52,000 a year net after taxes.
Holy crap.
Yes. 75% of Americans make under $50,000 a year. So
that's more than my mortgage. Yes. I can't.
Mine too, barely.
Crap.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's unbelievably expensive. And that's why when we talk about the minimum wage, we can't just look at fighting for 15. We have to fight for the long term. We have to fight for not just our generation, but the generations that are going to come after us. We have to make sure that Gen Z doesn't have to have these fights. Whatever the number is going to be for the next one, that doesn't have to have these fights. That we're not just setting it up so that our children's children have to come in and clean up our mess and fix it again. We have a chance to actually give people a good quality of life, and to make sure that quality of life is sustained, then we should be pursuing that by any means necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you support a federal job guarantee?
Oh, yes, I do. Oh my gosh. Federal jobs guarantee for a lot of reasons. And I think people kind of get a little bit confused on federal jobs guarantees. They're like, oh, so the government's just going to hand you a job? I mean, kind of. But at the same time, when we have these major infrastructure projects, when we have these major aerospace projects, whenever the government is doing something or changing something or investing somewhere, they're taking that money and they're paying it to private contractors who charge a fee, who upsell, who charge more than what they should for the labor they're providing. And then they don't pay living wages to the people that are working. They pay them $7.25 an hour. They pay them $15 an hour in areas like Seattle. So they kind of just undercut in order to make a profit. But if the government just did those projects and hired workers on for those projects directly, they'd be federal employees, they get federal benefits, they'd be paid a living wage, and there's nobody at the top trying to skim and make profit. So it'd wind up saving taxpayers money. It'd ensure people have a higher quality of life. It would give people a living wage. It would make sure that we crush our unemployment rates. And it would also make sure that people have money to spend. And when people have money to spend, that's money that goes back into our government. And when people are working, that's taxes that go back into our government. So the money it's kind of like paying for itself. And I know there's a lot of connections with modern monetary theory to it and everything. I'm learning, because I'm not an economist, unfortunately, but I'm still learning. But I know there's a ton of connections with modern monetary theory and a federal jobs guarantee. And a lot of it plays into each other and plays into itself. And I mean, the reality is it makes more sense for the federal government to provide a competitive opportunity for workers than to just shell out money to private corporations over and over again, who are going to be charging an arm and a leg for a subpar job sometimes. I mean, look at the bridges in New Jersey that are falling apart. If we had done a good quality job and paid people a good quality wage, and the government wasn't subcontracting to a company, maybe that bridge wouldn't have collapsed. And maybe, you know, we could have employed these people longer term and they could have done maintenance. Maybe we could have had them employed and they could do the roads around it. And I mean, it creates more opportunities than it takes away. And all it requires is, it just requires us to prioritize our people over things like corporations and profits, because, you know, we all die and no one really cares about how much money we made. And if we're prioritizing people and giving them the best possible opportunity to lead the best possible life, I mean, that's not a handout, that's the government's obligation.
Sure. It's an investment.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's, I mean, the beautiful thing about a federal job guarantee would be less homelessness, less depression. Everyone would be so much more happier. The economy would boom. I mean, people who get out of jail, who are looking for work, they would get it. I mean, the people could afford to buy homes again. Like, yes. I mean, it is totally, everything would be connected to it.
Exactly.
So somebody in the audience, I guess you would say, is asking about UBI. The problem with UBI, it can work with a federal job guarantee, but a standalone UBI, if you look at other countries, the problem with that is that they take away all other programs. They take away Social Security and Medicare and disability and all those things, and everyone gets the same exact amount. And it's, I believe the average was $627 per month, which is nothing. And you end up having to work anyway. So it's not advantageous. So having UBI so that you have that minimum income, but it's also a job guarantee, it's kind of cohesive, and, you know, that's definitely the route to go. Just to clarify for the gentleman in the comments.
Sure. And I mean, I've been asked a lot about UBI, actually. And I think that, well, when you talk about it, we talk about it in the scope of automation. And I mean, this is going to be a terrible example, but I look at the security robot that just took a dive into the pond recently, and I don't really worry so much that automation is an immediate threat to jobs. But I mean, it is something we need to consider, and it is something we really need to work towards. And I think the discussion about UBI has to be on the table right now, because we all know how technology works. Look how far cell phones have come. Since I was in high school, my phone went from being this big to being this big. I can fit the entire wealth of human knowledge in my pocket, and I use it to look at dog videos. I mean, it's crazy. But I mean, technology moves really fast. So once someone has a breakthrough, it's going to be a ripple effect. So we have to have the discussion about UBI. But I don't think right now, where we're at, that's the only solution that's available to us. I think a federal jobs guarantee in tandem with the UBI discussion is really what really needs to happen at this point. I think that's really what's going to get us farther. It's going to keep us safer. It's going to keep our people well protected. It's going to make sure that they have a better quality of life, that it's not just a short term, it's a long term. And it gives us a little bit of flexibility to work out the kinks in a UBI system with a federal jobs guarantee, I think.
Absolutely. Somebody, Jason, hey, Jason, somebody is asking, where do you donate?
Oh, you can donate at votesarahsmith.com/donate. And it's Sarah with an H. Votesarahsmith.com/donate is our donation link. And I think we just received a ton of donations. And I think our average right now is we're a little over $25. I think we're about 24 or 26.
Let's get her at 27, guys.
Yeah, we're so close. But donations have gone up like crazy. I mean, Alex's win, really, it showed that these campaigns have legs, that it's not about what's in your war chest that proves your viability. It's not about how much money you have that proves your viability. It's about your connection with the voters. It's about your message, your vision, and it's about getting out there and meeting people and telling people about your campaign. Grassroots works, and it works well. And we just have to have that faith, because I think part of what's happening too is a lot of people get really discouraged. The news is really sad. Our campaign tries to have a ton of fun. We try to really bring a lot of joy to our campaign, and we always have fun canvassing. We had a camera guy following us around. He kept laughing because I kept making jokes to my volunteers. But we try to have a little bit of joy because politics is depressing. So it's really easy to feel like this is all for nothing, like we can't fight against the machine. But that's the kind of defeatist attitude they want us to have. Because when you feel defeated, you're not going to fight. But when we actually have that energy, when we actually have that fire in us, that especially Alex's win gave us, that everything leading up to her primary race gave us, when we capture that energy and we build on it, we can win. We can topple these incumbents. Brent Welder is doing a fantastic job. Adrienne Bell crushed it in her primary down in Texas. Vanessa Adia was unopposed. She was amazing. No one dared to stand up to her. But we've accomplished a lot. And even in the times when we've lost, we have accomplished so much despite not taking the seats. We've forced incumbents left. We've changed the entire narrative. And the entire progressive movement has shaken the establishment's foundation. We shook up the conversation. We proved that we have legs, and we proved that we're not going anywhere and that it's growing. It's not shrinking. The conversation about ICE went from one tweet to an overnight phenomenon. Medicare for all is now old hat. When 10 years ago, they were saying it was crazy. It was a crazy thing to have universal health care. Now, if you're not on board with single payer universal health care, get out of the way. I mean, we've changed everything. And it's easy to have the defeatist attitude and to stop seeing those victories. But we have a lot of momentum, and we have a ton of opportunity, and we have a ton of races like mine and a ton of races like Alex's, like Dorothy's, that we can win. But we have to band together, and we have to keep the energy alive, and we have to just push forwards for the win and recognize that getting progressive individuals in those seats is really where we have to focus our energy. And the more we come together and the harder we focus and the more we talk about platform and the more we talk about substance and the more we talk about what the effects could be of these kinds of progressive policies, the more seats we're going to flip over and over again. This is where the start of our tidal wave begins. This isn't the crest, this is the base.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And on that note, there's so much talk about 2020, but if we don't get people like yourself in there, we are not going to get a progressive in 2020. We need people who are progressives, Bernie Kratz, DSA, any of those people now. So what good is it if everything stays the same and we get a progressive president? You think they're going to pass anything, let alone be allowed to run? Yes. So, we still have primaries. We still have 20 left through mid-September, and then we have November. So it's not over. We definitely have to keep talking about these primaries. There's something very advantageous in Washington is you guys have open primaries, which is huge.
Awesome.
Yeah, ours are closed, and
it's so rough. And I mean, the thing that my husband and I have talked about repeatedly is because we talk about politics, and we realized the other day that that's all we talk about now. But that's okay. And
my husband won't talk to me with like he won't.
We tried to set a rule. He's like, every now and then he just goes, okay, open campaign talk. And then I'm like, okay, open campaign talk. And then he goes, close campaign talk. And I'm like, okay, close it. And there's like 10 minutes before I'm like, okay, but this other thing about the forum that's coming out, and he's like, yeah, okay. And then we realize we've slipped back into campaign talk. And we're like, no, we tried so hard. But I mean, the biggest thing that we've noticed, and our biggest observation is to change the entire landscape in Congress right now, we only need about 5 or 6 progressives that have been to be elected into those seats. We only need about 5 or 6 major victories. And Cori Bush, Brent Welder, Dorothy Gasquet, myself, Lindsey Fagan, Adrienne Bell, I'm going to keep bringing them up because they're amazing and I love them. But I mean, we've got Chardo Richardson, we've got Mike Hepburn. If we can get just 5 or 6 of these people into those seats, we will have changed the entire balance of power, not just in Congress, but in the Democratic Party. Because with Alex's upset of Joe Crowley, if I can take out Adam Smith as well, we will have taken out 2 of the DNC's top fundraisers. So we will have effectively bankrupted the DNC, and we will force them to come down to grassroots levels and listen to the people again. Because if they're not going to seize the opportunity, we are going to make them take it.
Absolutely. Tell Cori Bush I've been trying to get a hold of her for like 2 months and I want her to come on. And tell Brent I've been trying to get
Cori, I was so mad. She was like,
ass on here too.
Brent get his butt out here, and Cori, because Cori was in an auto accident. I felt so terrible. It laid her out really hard, and she's back on her feet now. She's doing amazing. She's back out in the district. She's running around, and her campaign kind of caught fire too. So she's been in the same boat as me, where overnight I went from like, oh my gosh, Alex won, to the next morning I'm up at 5 a.m. responding to emails, like going out, leaving out the door at 6:30. I'm still responding to emails all day. I'm trying to delegate information, but I'm really bad at delegating. So I'm doing everything on top of my work. And it was kind of hectic the first couple days. But Cori, I know, is in the same boat. So I'll tap her shoulder and I'll see if I can get her to contact you.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, so I'm like, dude, I've had a congressman on twice, but I can't get a hold of these first time people running. Like, what the hell?
If it makes you feel better, I'm in a Twitter chat with Brent, and he hasn't responded to any of the four of us in the Twitter chat. So you're not alone. But they're busy. I get it. I mean, or you have to prioritize your energy. If it's chit-chatting with us on the side about some strategy stuff, or it's out there knocking doors, I'd much rather they were out there knocking doors, meeting people.
Yeah,
if getting them out the doors is where we have to get them, then that's where I want them to be. Do where they're going to do the most good. But I'm never afraid to tell people, hey, contact Joy.
You did mention immigration reform. And as far as your district, do you have a lot of immigrants?
We do. So we actually have a really heavy refugee population and a really high immigrant population. There was a huge thing happened in Columbia City, which is in South Seattle. They just had an ICE arrest at one of the distilleries and one of the bars down there of one of the workers. So immigration is a huge concern for us. And you know what, I've been reading a lot about the deportations and about the denaturalization task forces and things like that. That actually is a sore topic for me, because my dad's actually an immigrant. And he's a UK immigrant. He's a UK citizen, but I mean, he's not a US citizen. And it's really scary. And I can only imagine. I mean, my dad's just the right skin color. He'll be the first person to tell you that. But it's really scary to think that it's possible that my dad could be taken away from my family at the age of almost 80 years old. And I can't even imagine the kind of fear that the immigrant communities are living in. We have an opportunity to create a humane immigration system, that we're not locking kids in cages. We're not separating families. We have the option to put companies in a position where they have to sponsor people for citizenship. They can't just play around with these visas. They have to give people citizenship. So they're not living in uncertainty after 6 years, they have to go back to a country that's not their home anymore. We have to listen to people that are coming to us seeking asylums, fleeing domestic violence, that are fleeing war violence. We have to listen to these people, because, I mean, we lift our lamp beside the golden door. That's what we're built off of. I mean, we need a humane immigration system. It's the lifeblood of our country. It's what we're founded on. It's what we do. We're the protector, right? We're not the ostracizer. We're not the country that pushes people out. We're the country that lifts its shield, and we protect the most marginalized, the most vulnerable. That's what our dream is. So to have ICE violently ripping families apart, to be separating children and putting them in cages, to have them in these tent camps, to have an immigration system that leaves people feeling uncertain at all times, to not have a clean dream act ready to go right now. I mean, this is a complete violation of everything that we stand for and we were founded on. This is our chance to prove to the world that we're the nation that lifts its shield. We're the nation that protects. We're the nation that will accept you as you are, that will bring you into our borders, that will help you live your best possible life and help you flee fear. And instead of helping people flee it, we're creating it. So we need immigration reform, because without it, it speaks to the soul of our nation.
Absolutely. And that's something so beautiful about, either running or doing my show, or even the viewers. We're on the right side of history because we're aware of this stuff, and we're not just sitting here about it. We're being vocal. We're going to events. We're organizing. That's pretty amazing. It's powerful, and it's good to take a step back and look at that, because sometimes we forget.
just as far as immigration goes, I mean, people like yourself that have taken a risk, that are starting this, that are running their own media outlets, people that are organizing and that are being activists, it does make a difference. And I was down at the Tacoma Detention Center, which is a private detention facility, which is abhorrent to me, because if it's private and it's for profit, someone's making a profit. But we were down there talking to the Occupy ICE people, and we were just chatting with some of them. And she actually told us at night, when they do noise making at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., their good morning and their good night is what they call it. And when they were doing it, they kept seeing this same guard every night at 9 o'clock come and prop open the door. And he'd just stand there and stare at them. And at first she thought it was really intimidating. And then another guard would come up and then he'd have to close the door and shut it. And she was like, what is this guy doing? He's trying to scare us. She realized he was opening the door so the people inside could hear. So
amazing.
The things that we do, being out there and making these demonstrations, they are not falling on deaf ears. And it might be falling on deaf ears for our representatives, but it's not falling on deaf ears for the people that desperately need that moment and that reminder that they're not unwelcome, that people are fighting for them, that reminder that they're not alone. So having activists out there, having these demonstrations, having people like yourself that are taking a risk and taking on a monumentous project, like interviewing candidates and interviewing sitting Congress people, this is huge. This takes a lot, but it means something. And everybody sees it. And the people that need it most see it when they need it most and find it when they need it most. So it's important. Just be out there and keep the energy going.
Oh, thank you. I have goosebumps. Do you guys understand why people are like all about this woman? Are you guys getting it? Like, because I was like, I kept hearing all these things, and then I watched a few interviews, and I'm like, yeah, her energy is awesome. And now I'm like, have we known each other 2 decades? I feel like I'm talking to you so like just carefree.
Perfect. I love it. I'm a comfortable person. I'm comfortable in my own skin.
That's awesome. And that's how you need to be. We need more empathy in politics as well. We need, the something that we see so much is, well, it doesn't affect me. That seems to be like, just tragic. It's a cancer. So anytime people, like yourself, can say, look, this needs to happen, even if it's not, affecting you directly, that is important. We all need to do that. You actually, on your platform, you talk about gerrymandering. Mm-hmm. I'm in PA. I get it.
Yes, I point out Paul Perry was running for a little while, and we shared pictures of our districts and everything like that. And I loved his when he shared it with the group, because it was like, it looks like it comes out this way and then it shrinks really small and then it grows out here, and he just responds with, "Can you tell where all the people of color live?" And I mean, gerrymandering is, there's been a couple of different ways that we could do it. We've talked about a ton of different methods, but everybody knows that gerrymandering is a problem because it disenfranchises voters, it disenfranchises people of color, disenfranchises young people, and it gives the wealthy an advantageous upper hand. It gives them control, because if you only put a few poor people in the rich people district and you put the rest of the poor people in a different rich people district, and then even more poor people in a different rich people district, all those people that are low income suddenly have their votes split around and their voice isn't being heard. And we have a better way to do it. We have 100 better opportunities on the table. There's a ton of different ways. There was a Harvard study that was done that says there's something like 6 or 7 different ways we could do it. Like the hex blocking for district creation is a big, I'm a fan of that one. We could do it by geographical area. We could do it by zip code clusters. We could have an even split. We could just have no gerrymandering at all. And then it's just a state, every seat is statewide. There's a ton of different opportunities, but we know gerrymandering is wrong. And we know it's bad, and we know it's affecting people, and we know it's disproportionately affecting communities, and we're not talking about it enough, not on a national level. And there are some victories down in Texas. There have been some victories. I think PA was one of the areas that had a victory on that front. And then Michigan, I know, had one. And then Wisconsin, I think, has something in the process. But we know it's wrong, and we're hearing about it on a state scale, but no one's talking about it on a national scale. So we have options. We have studies that are done. We have things we can point to. We have methods we can try. We just need representation that's bold enough that they're not going to crumple under the foot of the establishment when they bring it up. And, as a millennial that's struggled every day of my life and worked my tail off, I'm really not afraid of a little bit more struggle.
That's awesome. I feel like there's a million other things we could talk about, but if you if you want to leave our viewers with something for them to take away so that they would recommend you to people in Washington, or throw you a few dollar donations, or share the show, or anything like that, what do you want to leave people with?
I want people to leave with the feeling that this isn't just about one person or one district or one state. This movement is about all of us. This movement is about every person that feels disenfranchised. It's about every person that's frustrated they can't buy a house. It's about every person that can't start a family. This is about every person that can't get out from under their student debt. Every person suffering from medical bankruptcy. Every person that feels afraid under the umbrella of a Trump presidency. This is about every single person from coast to coast, all across the nation. And we need to come together, and we need to band together in order to get people elected who recognize that, and who see that, and who look at the bigger picture, and who look down the line and see where we could be. We need people who recognize that the America we are now is not the America we can be. And we need to come together and coalesce around progressive campaigns and help fight to become that nation that we know we're capable of. Because now is our moment. 2018 is our time. It's not the time for corporations. It's not the time for compromise. It's not the time for establishment politicians. This time is for us. It's for the working people. It's for people who are struggling. It's for people who are done fighting to be heard. It's for people who are done fighting to force their congresspeople to listen. This is our moment, and we have a chance to seize it. Whether that's through getting involved in my campaign, donating to my campaign, or finding a local candidate that's progressive in your area, whether that's you yourself running for state house or city council, whatever that looks like to you, seize your moment, because it's happening right now. And we have the opportunity to grab it, take hold, and rise with it, or we'll flutter out and we'll just lose it. So we need people who are going to get involved and be boots on the ground, be a voice on the phones, making phone calls, who are going to actually take up the mantle and run for office. It's hard. Oh, it's so hard, but it's worth it, and it's rewarding, and it will change the world. Even if you think you're a little nobody who helps run a mechanic garage in a small suburb of Seattle, you can change the world. And we just have to be willing to try. We just have to be willing to take a stand and believe in ourselves just enough, and then believe in each other and lean on each other and protect each other and help build each other up, and reach out across campaign to campaign, coast to coast, and just give everything we have to conquer 2018, because this is the time for us.
You'll have apologize to your husband for me, because I'm just gonna kind of steal you, stick you in my pocket, and just be like, oh, I'm bummed. Let me just take that. Oh my God. Because I'm feeling inspired right now. Like, that is amazing. That is so awesome. Like,
I'm inspired by you guys. You all bring it out in me. I love it. I love seeing people. I love running on a slate. I love having people message me and be like, I filed to run for city council today. It's so cool. And to know that that's our movement that's inspiring people to do it is just gives me goosebumps.
That is so awesome. I cannot thank you enough for joining us. You're freaking phenomenal. I've got a 27 donation coming your way tonight, girl. It's all good. So thank you so much. I wish you so much luck with this. I wish you the best, and I hope we keep in touch. I'll keep promoting you and get the word out. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to have another amazing Washington candidate back next week, Tambourine. She's freaking amazing. And Monday, I am finally going to get my basement dweller party. And I have three Bernie delegates. Are going to be joining me. I was at Occupy DNC on the outside protesting, and they were on the inside protesting. So we're going to have a basement dweller party literally in my basement. Awesome. And it's going to be on the computer here, and we're going to have drinks, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to probably cry in the fetal position. But it should be amazing because they're good people. So thank you so much again, Sarah. You're amazing. And thank you guys so much for watching. Please share, please donate. And if any of you guys are in the area and can canvas, phone bank, anything like that, please definitely consider that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.